All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast, the official podcast of thefantasyfootballfanatics.com. It is Tuesday, April 2nd. We're through April's Fool's Day. I can't even talk. And here we are. One-man show. Neither CJ nor Jason can make it today, but that's fine. The show must go on, as we always say, and and by we I mean I, have an amazing show for you guys today. Today, we're going to be talking about, of course, our first mock draft of the 2019 season. We've done some early mock drafts pre the free agency. Now that free agency has happened, we're going to see, now that some of these guys have landed in some places, where they're going in mock drafts. And of course, this is not something necessarily that you're going to want to bookmark for down the road, because there's still a lot of implications of things that are going to come. The NFL draft itself still needs to happen, which will widely affect this whole draft. Expect to see a lot of those rookies go in this draft, but you know, it's one of those things where it's going to be in flux for a while going forward. So take it as you will. It's going to be a fun exercise. I'm genuinely curious, because I know where I would take a lot of these guys, but I want to see where the masses are taking them. And the draft, the mock draft emulator that we're using right now is based on their draft status, is based on the majority of people who are mock drafting right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how this draft plays out. Randomly drew the number 3 pick, so this should be, it's a pretty good spot to draw out of. We're gonna get a top end running back, at least we should, and then it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses. Before we get to any of that, make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening, because we're going to bring you some of the top headlines from around the league as well. We're a year-round podcast every Tuesday and Friday. Even if I'm here by myself, we're going to be here bringing you all the information you need to win your fantasy football league in 2019 and beyond. So make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening, whether that be on Twitch, YouTube, iTunes, former iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Podcast Addict. You know, we're all over the place. Follow us on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. That's 3 F's, at the FF Fanatics. On Facebook at facebook.com/the Fantasy Football Fanatics. And if you want to support the show, help us keep these lights on, keep doing what we're doing, you can do that on Twitch or at Patreon at patreon.com/the Fantasy Football Fanatics. Help us keep bringing you guys this free product every single week. You know, this is a passion of ours. We love what we do. That being said, let's move on to some of those top headlines from around the league before we get to our mock draft. Now, not a lot of news to get to today. There's some things that are really worth talking about that have happened, but I want to make sure the guys are here, because some of it's going to be up for debate. Some rule changes, some this, that, the other, how things have been implemented, some things that are just simply changing, and some signings that might be fun to talk about. But a couple key fantasy relevant notes that I thought were very important on giving out to you guys. For starters, word has it that the New York Giants are reportedly planning, and this is coming out of the owners' meeting, the New York Giants are planning on keeping Eli Manning around far into the 2020 season, as far as the 2020 season. Now, the reason this is interesting is because Eli Manning is entering the final year of his contract. He's only contracted through 2019, so this suggests that they're going to get a new deal done. But this is very interesting, because we were expecting the Giants to probably pursue either Josh Rosen from the Arizona Cardinals, trying to trade for him, or drafting a quarterback, whether that be at number 6 overall or moving up to try and get a top guy like Kyler Murray. So this is interesting to see, because this is not what a lot of people are expecting. The report goes as far as to say that the Giants are currently eyeing a pass rusher at the number 6 spot, which means that they are definitely locked into Eli, or that they're pretty content to the fact that they're going to be expecting the Cardinals maybe to draft Kyle Murray at number 1 and then trading for Josh Rosen, is the way I'm interpreting it that way, should that be the way that this actually plays out. Obviously, time will tell. Other interesting news, the Oakland Raiders, they are working out, they've so far, they brought in and worked out this year's top 2 quarterback prospects for the NFL draft, that being Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins, and only those 2. So it's interesting, because right now they're linked to an edge rusher. Obviously, they have Derek Carr, and he's their young quarterback. You expect to be of the future, yet this is strange that they're bringing in only the top elite quarterbacks, the ones that they would realistically have a shot at, you know, at the top of the draft. One of these guys, should they fall to them or maybe move up. So it's very interesting to look at, because remember, the Raiders are drafting at the number 4 overall spot. So realistically, they could get their hands on Dwayne Haskins. He should fall to them past the Jets. The Jets aren't going to take him, and the 49ers shouldn't take him. And we expect Kyler Murray to go in one of those top 3 spots. Most likely number 1 overall to the Cardinals. Obviously, that depends on what side of the argument you fall on, with Josh Rosen being there in-house currently. Interesting stuff for another day. So I'd really like to have Jason's thoughts on this, but obviously he's not here today, so we'll talk about that probably on Friday's show. Moving to the running back position, there's a little bit of interesting news. Unrestricted free agent running back and former Los Angeles Rams running back C.J. Anderson reportedly has signed with the Detroit Lions. This is interesting because this is not at all what we want to see. Obviously, we were all hoping that Kerryon Johnson would get just a massive workload this year and be a real nice fantasy sleeper for us and really just kind of break out. Unfortunately, does not look like that's going to be the case because C.J. Anderson's going to come in and probably challenge him for snaps. We heard that they wanted to limit his touches, but we assumed that that was going to be with guys that they already had under contract, whether that be Zach Zenner or Theo Riddick. But now C.J. Anderson coming in, this is a bona fide, like, he's a fringe RB1. I mean, we saw what he did with fresh legs. Let's not forget, he trailed off through the playoffs as he played tough matchups. But this is a guy who, through his career, has really and consistently flashed as having the upside of being an elite running back in this league. Maybe not your top tier elite, but one of those guys that you could possibly build a franchise around. When healthy, he was that guy in Denver. Now he goes and he backs up a young Kerryon Johnson, a second-round pick from a year ago, who all of us in fantasy circles are thinking is going to have a really, really big sophomore season coming back from injury. And now this is going to really deflate his value. And that really changes his draft stock for our fantasy leagues. And that's stuff that we'll be getting into as we get into our mock drafts and moving forward. So that's interesting, something to note. If you are high on Kerryon Johnson, you might want to move him down a little bit in your rankings if you are crazy like we are and doing your rankings as early as April, like we are. Cleveland Browns running back Duke Johnson. This is pretty interesting. He reportedly skipped the optional team activities right now, the volunteer workouts, and reportedly wants out of Cleveland. Now, he has reportedly had his representation ask Cleveland for a trade, and reportedly, since this has all gone down, the Houston Texans, the New York Jets, and the Philadelphia Eagles are all interested in Duke Johnson's services. Now, that's interesting because a lot of these teams don't have a need for running back. I mean, he might have a role in Houston as, a viable number 3, but none of these guys really need somebody. They have Lamar Miller, who, depending on what side of the ball you kind of fall on, whether you are a fan of Lamar Miller or not, there are a lot of people. He's polarizing. I get that. But he is a guy that we know the Texans are committed to. They're going to have for a while. They have a third-round pick in Devonta Foreman there that they really like, so he would probably step in and just be that third running back yet again. Maybe he feels like he has a better opportunity to succeed there and being behind those two guys as opposed to, well, obviously he doesn't have any say in it, but he might like it better there than being behind Nick Chubb and eventually Kareem Hunt. So could be a better spot for him, but either way, it's not going to be huge. And then obviously the Jets just acquired Le'Veon Bell. The Eagles just got Jordan Howard, and they have already a ton of running backs there. So I don't think that any of this is a good landing spot for Duke Johnson. And I don't think this is good for Cleveland to move him because as of right now, he is their number 2 back. And that's because, remember, Kareem Hunt suspended. So he's going to miss time. And probably 9 weeks for you for fantasy. He's got an 8-week suspension, plus the bye week might fall into that first couple weeks. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Duke Johnson, what the Browns decide to do, because behind Nick Chubb right now, they don't have too much. They've got Duke Johnson, Dontrell Hillard, and what is his name? Devontae Mays is the other guy's name, a guy that I wouldn't expect most people to know. I know a little bit about him because that's what I do, but yeah, it's not a lot of talent. So if Nick Chubb goes down, Duke Johnson stands to have a substantial role until Kareem Hunt comes back, and we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, it'll be interesting to watch Duke Johnson possibly being traded. Last bit of news that I thought was worth talking about before we got to our mock draft today was that the Oakland Raiders have signed unrestricted free agent tight end Luke Wilson. This is a guy who we were expecting to have, be re-signed probably by the Seattle Seahawks. Had really, really good production in flashes last season before going down to injury. So this is something to monitor, something to watch going forward. And he's going to fill that Jared Cook role. I don't think that with the weapons that they have there, he's going to get a huge workload, but he could be a boom-bust guy, a streaming candidate type guy, and we'll see how that all plays out. But that's the news. That's all the stuff that we figured was really worth talking about to this point. And with all of that being said, let's move into our mock draft. Now, as I already specified, we have we randomly selected the number 3 overall spot. And so far, Todd Gurley went number 1 overall, which I doubt will be the case come your actual fantasy season. And then the guy I was hoping would fall to us, Saquon Barkley, went with the number 2 pick. That's really unfortunate because to me, he's the number 1 in this year's draft as of this moment. Obviously, you have to weigh the loss of Odell Beckham Jr., how that's going to affect the offense positively and negatively for him. But he's a guy that got this done last year with a so-so offensive line and an offense that really kind of sputtered. And I think that his volume is going to go up regardless. And I don't expect his running ability to go down at all. I think he's going to be an unbelievable threat in both aspects, and so therefore I think he's going to be very, very good for fantasy this year. We've talked about this quite a bit. But my third guy that I have on my rankings right now is the guy that's remaining, and that is one Ezekiel Elliott, and the experts agree. He is going to get a massive workload. He can catch the ball, and the Cowboys look to have a resurgence on offense this season. They might be a much improved team and possibly a serious contender. So I really like Ezekiel Elliott. We know what he can do with his legs. He can catch the ball. He is on our team. He is our stud, and now we have a very long wait until we draft again. So from there, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Melvin Gordon, James Conner, Joe Mixon, David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, the 10th pick. 10 running backs back to back before we finally see wide receivers go. And DeAndre Hopkins, the first wide receiver off the board, which is kind of interesting to me, but it's stuff we can break down some other time. Then Devontae Adams rounds out the first round. On to the second round, we have Michael Thomas, Tyreek Hill still going very, very early. I guess if you believe that Tyreek Hill is going to be cleared of all suspensions and all charges, that's where he's going to go. He's going to go as a top 5 wide receiver. Here he goes as the 4th one off the board as the 2nd pick in the first round. Interesting. And then this is where it gets really funny. Kerryon Johnson. I think this is possibly value for him if they didn't just sign CJ Anderson. That changes everything, and that's why, again, this draft will look very, very different come your draft season. Dalvin Cook went next. We expect him to have a bounce-back year. Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr., Nick Chubb, which will probably fall as well, Travis Kelce, and Antonio Brown falling all the way to the 9th pick in the second round, late second rounder, and that makes him the 8th wide receiver off the board. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, sorry, 7th wide receiver off the board. So Travis Kelce's still making his way into the second round. That's pretty intriguing to me. Now, we're at a very short turn right now, and every team in front of us has drafted a running back. So we could theoretically go and get ourselves a lockdown number 1 receiver, or get ourselves 2 elite running backs and just load up a wide receiver after that. Wide receiver is a much deeper position than running back, so you could really make this argument either way. And for me, it comes down to position scarcity. There are a lot. There are way more wide receivers than there are picks before our next pick, guys that I love. There are only a couple running backs that I have in the upper echelon, whether that be Aaron Jones. We know he's going to take a step back, but I think he's going to be in a drastically improved offense this year. Leonard Fournette, if he can stay healthy, we know he's going to have a crucial role. And then it gets a little bit murky. Sony Michel, there's a lot of backs in New England. Marlon Mack, is he going to stay as the lead guy? Phillip Lindsay, we saw great things from him, but can he get it done over a full season? Derrick Henry doesn't catch a lot of balls, very boom bust. For Devontae Freeman, in a bounce back year, could be an awesome sleeper pick that we might be able to get. But for me, I think I'm going to go with the guy who I think that we're hearing a lot of coach speak. I don't think he's going to get all the carries. Jamal Williams is going to get touches, but Aaron Jones to me is a guy who has the potential out of all these guys to give me a high end to definitely running back 1 upside, but a high end to floor, because Leonard Fournette, injury prone like crazy, doesn't catch a lot of balls, and then we already expressed a lot of our concerns as we get below that. So I'm going to go back-to-back running back here. I'm going to get 2 elite running backs, and Jamal Williams goes down. Aaron Jones is going to be an absolute stud for fantasy. He was really good when healthy last year, and in a much better offense, a guy that I am really high on. I would love to get him as a 3rd rounder, but being the top prospect off the board in these rankings based on this draft client, I don't think he's going to make it back to us. I feel like one of these teams might decide to go running back. I don't want to take that risk. So Aaron Jones is on my team. I have Ezekiel Elliott and Aaron Jones as my running backs. I am sold. And I was right. One team did go running back. So what happened? Zach Ertz went at the back of the second. So second tight end off the board, then Juju Smith-Schuster. So we only lost 1 wide receiver, and he was one of the ones that was at the top of the board, one of the guys I was really excited about possibly getting, but I'll let that be someone else's problem because he's a big question mark. He's a big unknown with the overhaul that has been the Pittsburgh Steelers offense this offseason. George Kittle, early 3rd rounder. I feel like any tight end this early is insane, but that's because I usually wait double digits for tight end. But George Kittle, top of the 3rd, and then Leonard Fournette went with the 2nd pick in the 3rd round. I've got my 2 stud running backs. I need a wide receiver right now. I am not look, and this is where it gets interesting, and this is where draft philosophy really comes into play. We've seen a lot of we've seen 3 tight ends go so far. Shockingly, no quarterbacks. Normally, I see Patrick Mahomes gone by this point. And this is where drafting philosophy differs from person to person, analyst to analyst, and just your overall approach. I personally don't take, if you've been with the show for any time at all, I don't take quarterbacks until very late. I like to dive for value. Unless it's a 2 quarterback league, I will wait until close to double digits or into the double digit rounds to draft my quarterback. quarterback because there's so much value out there. And we always give you guys these streaming guys every single week. And as we always say, and it's been the case every year we've done this show, if you take our advice on quarterbacks and you take, these streaming candidates, if you happen to pick the best one out of all of us, I should really do a study on if you take the worst one out of all three of us every single week. But we've every single year put together the quarterback one at the end of the season. If you were to average, put all that together and make it as one player would have been throughout that time. So it's a viable strategy. I believe in it. A lot of people don't. A lot of people like to get that set and forget at quarterback. I understand that. It's all philosophy, but you'll never see me drafting quarterback this early. Tight end, same thing. It's not worth the value. Yeah, those top elite guys, they set themselves apart, but those top tight ends don't come close to any of these elite running backs or wide receivers. So I'm going to go ahead and get myself my starting wide receiver right now, is basically the long story short. And a guy who's staring me right in the face, a guy who had a great year last year, and a guy who I very much anticipate having an even better 2019 with Bruce Arians as his new head coach. He knows how to get these guys open. He has high scoring offenses. I have full faith that Mike Evans will have himself another wide receiver one season, and I'm going to take him as my wide receiver one. And some other guys on the board, just so you know, if you're not watching the video and listening online, we have guys like AJ Green, a great wide receiver. He's had injuries the last couple of years. That's kind of scary. Mike Evans a little bit safer. T.Y. Hilton could have an even better year than he's had now that there's more talent around him. But I know Mike Evans is a guy who's going to get he's in a great offensive system, and I know he's going to get a lot of volume, and it's a much less cluttered space. So for me, it's really between T.Y. Hilton and Mike Evans right now because AJ Green's injury history, and Mike Evans is the obvious pick for me. But you could sway me with T.Y. Hilton. I would love to get him at this point too. So Mike Evans is the addition to the team. AJ Green did go next, and then with the 5th pick in the 3rd round, Patrick Mahomes did go. So there's your first quarterback, mid-3rd rounder. Not Aaron Rodgers, who many would suspect to be the number one, but obviously last year, if you watched last season at all, it's understandable why people would go Patrick Mahomes, though Aaron Rodgers did go in this round. We'll get there in a second. Marlon Mack went next, and then Sony Michel, so we got some running backs. T.Y. Hilton did go as the next wide receiver. Amari Cooper, then Aaron Rodgers, Tariq Cohen. That could be really, really good value. Tariq Cohen at the back of the 3rd. And then Hunter Henry. A lot of faith in Hunter Henry coming back from injury in the 2019 season. I have him as a top 6 tight end for me, but again, I would not take him this early, and I would not expect to see him go this early. So that's really interesting for me. But yeah, 12th pick in the 3rd round, early 4th, Chris Carson. Interesting. Derrick Henry, so early 4th. That's actually probably really good value for him based on where I expect him to go come actual draft season. Keenan Allen falling wow, he fell really far. I expected Keenan Allen to be probably a late 2nd, early 3rd rounder, and here he is as an early 4th rounder. Stephon Diggs, Damian Williams, Adam Thielen, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks. So we have back-to-back Rams wide receivers, and then Phillip Lindsay did go right before us, and now we're sitting here on the board. We have 2 running backs. We have 1 wide receiver. We're sitting at our very short turn, and for me, we're at the same situation we were last time we were here. There's a running back that I think sets himself apart. There's actually 3 running backs I really like, and I'd like to get my hands on one of these guys. Wide receivers, there's just a lot of players I have in a similar tier. None of them really stand out to me. You can make an argument for a couple of these guys, but I don't know. I really think that the position scarcity of running back makes me lean running back here instead of wide receiver. So I'm going to get my 3rd running back, have elite talent across the board, and a guy who is going to be a flex player for me probably really consistently. I'm going to get, coming back from injury, Devonta Freeman. He's been a running back 1 many years out of his career, and I think he could come back to being that guy yet again, and he's going to be my flex number 3 running back. That's amazing value for me at the end of the 4th round. Unfortunately, a bunch of wide receivers did go. Kenny Golladay, a guy who I would love to get as my 2nd wide receiver because I've got Mike Evans, who I know is a consistent guy. Kenny Golladay could be a massive high ceiling potential guy. You know, his nickname is Mini Megatron, being also a Detroit Lion. Big red zone body. I expect him to be their main red zone weapon this season. Was kind of hoping that he would fall to me. Was not the case. This is the risk that we take. Oh, you play with fire sometimes in drafts, you get burned. So it is what it is. Darius Geis went with the 1st pick in the 5th round. That's good value if he comes back from injury. There's a lot of concern around him and his many cleanup procedures he's had with his knees since his obviously season-ending injury. Also, them re-signing Adrian Peterson has deflated his value. So I think 5th is going to be probably where you start seeing him go in your drafts. He has the potential. he has the definite ceiling and potential to be a guy who could be a second rounder, but this is a safe pick, and I think that this is naturally we're going to see him go. And then you have Cooper Kupp going as your second pick in the 5th round. All 3 main wide receivers for the Los Angeles Rams off the board. And here we are. We're sitting in the 5th round. We have 3 running backs, 1 wide receiver. So for me, I've got to look wide receiver as much as I might like to get my hands on a Mark Ingram or a Lamar Miller in Baltimore. We got to get some upper echelon guys here at wide receiver. There's some guys on the board that I really like. Alshon Jeffrey, boom bust, but he's on a good offense. We know kind of the relationship that he has with Carson Wentz. I think that he could be worth it in the 5th. And then it gets a little interesting. Julian Edelman, the only real show in town in New England. Whether you buy into New England or not, that's good value. Doug Baldwin is still here, which, I mean, we've heard nothing but news about how he still has surgeries planned. So this is probably where you're going to see this guy go, even though he's usually a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end 1 in a lot of seasons. Then you've got guys like Jarvis Landry, which is interesting. He could be a very good PPR piece here. DJ Moore, that's interesting as well. Probably the top number 1 guy in Carolina this season come season end. Calvin Ridley, a guy I like. And then a guy I'm very high on, Chris Godwin, is on the board, but I'm not going to be pulling the trigger on Chris Godwin when I already have Mike Evans. Man, there's a lot of wide receivers I actually have in a similar tier. Do I go ahead and forego wide receiver here and get myself yet another running back? I could have unbelievable depth at running back right now. And, I mean, I could punt a wide receiver. There's a lot of guys that I think have sleeper potential. Man, this is an interesting situation. Julian Edelman, often injured, but the main wide receiver in New England. This could go a lot of different ways. For the sake of the show, you know what? Let's do it. So this is, again, one of many reasons why we mock draft. We want to mock draft so we see what happens if we try out certain things. And this might not be something I do, in most traditional leagues, but let's go out and get a 4th running back. And then I don't need another running back until probably double-digit rounds. I can just load up on wide receivers, hope that one of these guys hits, because there's a lot of guys I really like still upcoming. Mike Williams, I think, will have a great breakout year. Sammy Watkins could be the number 1 receiver in Kansas City. He could have a lot of upside. Tyler Lockett could be the number 1 in Seattle if Doug Baldwin's not ready to go. Jarvis Landry, oh man, he might not make it back to us. He's a piece that I would actually really love to have. As a 5th rounder, Jarvis Landry. Okay, I'm gonna be safe here. I'm gonna not be a crazy person. It's between Jarvis Landry and Alshon Jeffrey for me. Alshon has the upside. Jarvis Landry, with Odell Beckham drawing the coverage, could have an unbelievable sophomore year with Cleveland. You know what? I need a PPR guy, but I also kind of need a boom bust guy. I'm interested what people would do here. I like to go with the high floor. So I'm going to go with Jarvis Landry because he could have a breakout year this year. Not the sexiest pick I can make, but I'm gonna do that because I already have 3 running backs and I can't start 4 running backs. So the running backs that I wanted all went, which is unfortunate. Kenyon Drake went with the next pick, so he snuck off the board. Alshon Jeffrey did go with the following pick. Julian Edelman, Cam Newton went as the 3rd quarterback, I think. That's interesting. Lamar Miller, Jerick McKinnon, Corey Davis, James White, and Doug Baldwin. Top of the 6, Mark Ingram did go. So actually, Ingram fell a lot farther than I thought he would. Andrew Luck finally went in the 6th round. I would love to get my hands on him. In the 6th round, I could be tempted to pull the trigger on if someone like Andrew Luck was there, but I'll happily wait as well. Jay Ajayi, OJ Howard, Deshaun Watson, Jordan Howard, Evan Ingram. That's good value for him. Tevin Coleman and Russell Wilson all went. And now we're sitting on the clock at the end of the 6th round. It's a short turnaround here. And there's a couple things that we could do. I could get myself a couple wide receivers that I really, really like, DJ Moore or Calvin Ridley. Both of these guys I expect to have great seasons this year. Both of them in their sophomore years with their respective teams in the NFL. LaShawn McCoy is on the board, but I already punted on running back when I had opportunity at higher tier guys. LaShawn McCoy is kind of fading in his career, injury prone, much older. Saw a massive decline last season. And yet Drew Brees is staring at me as a 6th rounder, and I never go quarterback this early, but I would not expect Drew Brees to actually be here come actual draft season. I'm going to stay true to my draft style. I'm going to go wide receiver here, and I'm going to get myself a boom bust, big red zone threat. I'm going to get my hands on DJ Moore because I need that wide receiver depth. Wow, dang. He didn't make it back to me. Calvin Ridley went next. LaShawn McCoy, top of the 7th. Drew Brees and Matt Ryan both went. But now there's a guy sitting out there, which is ranked 9th on this website. He's still here in the 7th round. A guy who I expect to be a top 6 quarterback at the end of the season. And I could get a stack with my wide receiver. I never do this, but you know what? I'm going to draft Baker Mayfield. I'm going to get my hands on a quarterback that I think definitely has top 6 potential. And really, the only way I see him not finishing as a quarterback 1 is if injuries happen all around him. Tough schedule, but yeah, I'm doing it. I never do this. This is going to be weird for me. I drafted Baker Mayfield. All right. So I currently have on my team, I've got 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and a quarterback, and we're in the 8th round. So behind him, Matt Breida went, Tyler Boyd, Carson Wentz, Tyler Lockett, Rashard Penny, Jameis Winston. I think that's good value. People are gonna sleep on him. I'd be shocked if he went this early in actual drafts, but I think he could easily return on value there. Chris Godwin in the late 7th, amazing value. Robbie Anderson, great value. Jared Goff, if you like quarterbacks this early, good value, but who am I to speak? I took one. Elijah McGuire in the 8th, top of the 8th. Cortland Sutton, good value. Sammy Watkins could be amazing value. Marvin Jones, good value. Mike Williams, Will Fuller, Dante Pettis, Royce Freeman, might be early on him, we'll see. And then Curtis Samuel, and now I'm sitting on the board. I have 3 wide receivers, 3 running backs. I can go either way, and in position scarcity kind of makes me want to lean running back here. Not a lot of guys that I really love still available. I could get one of my handcuffs right now, but I could probably also sleep on them right now. Wide receiver, I think there's much better value. I could get, we perceive to be the number 1 with the Giants with Golden Tate, also Sterling Shepard. They're both out there, 1 and 2. Christian Kirk could be a very good value here in the late 8th round. That's interesting. Larry Fitzgerald's still out there as well. Both of them, obviously, Arizona Cardinals. Michael Gallup's out there. Emmanuel Sanders, I'm not touching him. Anthony Miller could be sneaky. Kiki Kuti is out there. And then at running back, we've got guys like Kenneth Dixon and Gus Edwards, Baltimore Ravens. We've got Dion Lewis, who's out there. Latavius Murray, I'm not touching. This is why I kind of wish I had stuck to my guns and gone my 4th running back, because there's not a lot of exciting things happening at running back right now. Kareem Hunt's one of the top prospects, and you don't want him riding your bench for 8 to 9 weeks. So CJ Anderson's out there. That could be interesting, but I'll probably be able to get him later. Or do I look at tight end? I could get my hands on an elite tight end in the 8th round, like Eric Ebron, though I expect him to have a decline this year. David Njoku's out there. I expect him to have a decline. We thought he was going to have a great year, but now obviously Odell Beckham Jr. coming, he deflates things. Trey Burns out there. Jared Cook's out there. That's a guy that I'll probably try and get later. So let's get the value. Let's go wide receiver here, because I don't like any of these running backs for the 8th round. I'm going to get my hands on Golden Tate, a guy who is a very high floor guy. So I've got an every week starter in Mike Evans. I've got 2 move the chains PPR guys with definite upside in Golden Tate and Jarvis Landry. And then I've got DJ Moore, who could be a legit number 1. And that was our short turn. Kenneth Dixon went, then Sterling Shepard, top of the 9th, Gus Edwards, and Christian Kirk, all guys we talked about. So now we're in the 9th round. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because we've got 4 bench spots left. We still need a tight end, kicker, defense. But I'm eyeing Jared Cook, because I expect him to still be here for a couple of rounds. Let's get our hands on a running back here, because I don't like leaving drafts without at least 5 running backs, honestly. So I'm looking over there. I've got 3 already. Dion Lewis is there, who I think could have an increased role and is going to have a massive workload if Derrick Henry goes down, which Derrick Henry, the way he runs, is a very realistic thing. Naheem Hines, a backup. We're looking at all backups at this point. Or Ronald Jones. He could have a very good year this year. I actually kind of like that. You know what? I'm going to take a shot in the dark instead of getting one of these guys that I needed injured to happen in front of him. Ronald Jones is a guy I don't really believe in, but I believe in the system that he's in. I think Bruce Arians will find a way to get Ronald Jones going. It sounds like he likes Ronald Jones, and Ronald Jones, big letdown last year. He should not have been drafted when he was drafted. I think that he doesn't have what it takes to be an elite running back in this league, but as a 9th rounder in a good offense and one that will know how to use him, I think that he could get a lot of work in the passing game. He might be able to sneak you a lot of touchdowns, and he'd be a pretty good guy to probably have for trade bait. And he's the only one that has a clear chance at a starting job right now. Rex Burkhead's not going to be starter. Kareem Hunt suspended. Naheem Hines is a backup. Latavius Murray is a backup. Dion Lewis is a backup. You know what? Let's take a shot in the dark. We're close enough to the double-digit rounds. This is a gamble. I'm gonna grab Ronald Jones. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it could really pay off in the long run. We'll see. Emmanuel Sanders, Kiki Kute, Devin Funches, Anthony Miller, Austin Eckler, D.D. Westbrook, Austin Hooper, Kareem Hunt, back of the ninth. So we finally saw where suspended Kareem Hunt goes, a guy who could be a first rounder if not suspended. And then Jalen Samuels all went. So that's the back of the ninth. Top of the 10th, Dion Lewis did go. Robert Foster, Rex Burkhead, Naheem Hines, Eric Ebron went. Okay. We have Josh Adams, Latavius Murray, Duke Johnson. So as we talked about earlier on, we don't know where he's going to land, but Duke Johnson has been taken. And then Marquise Goodwin. So now we have what, 4 and 4? Yeah, we have 4 running backs, 4 wide receivers. I'd rather pull the trigger on another running back right now. And we've got a couple guys who could be really sneaky values here. They're all, again, backups. But there are some good wide receivers out there. Deshaun Jackson probably going to have a really good year this year, we would imagine. Michael Gallup is easily the number 2 there on a good offense. Larry Fitzgerald could put together yet another great year. I want nothing to do with John Brown or Adam Humphries. Geronimo Allison's going to be buried probably. Man, this gets interesting. Kenny Stills is still out there, and he's probably going to be the number 1 in Miami. But Miami, we expect them to lose a lot of games this season. So I'm probably going to stay clear of that. This is our short turn. Let's go ahead and get our hands on a running back that we expect to have some use, and then we'll get one of these wide receivers with our next pick, and then we'll start looking tight end probably the following round. I'm looking at Adrian Peterson here or CJ Anderson. Both of them are perceived backups, but both of these guys could win the starting role. Adrian Peterson, we saw what he could do last year. He was a running back 2 type guy. Darius Geis, we don't know his status. And, once we get to these double-digit rounds, we can drop guys if they don't materialize the way that we hope they would. Or we could really win if Darius Geis, we're hearing that this is all coach speak, he's not ready to go. Adrian Peterson could have a really good start to the season, and he's older, obviously. He's ancient for a running back, but we saw that he looked like he had plenty left to play last season. He could easily start the season on fire again this year if he gets the massive workload, and then you have an awesome piece to trade before he might wear down. So you know what? I'm going to draft Adrian Peterson, and he's on my team. Deonta Foreman, another backup, and Michael Gallup did go. Isaiah Crowell, Adam Humphries all went. So here we sit at the top of the 11th. We've got 2 bench spots. We've got tight end, kicker, defense. So I want to get my hands on another wide receiver right now, and then I'm going to go probably tight end, maybe bench, because there's still a lot of tight ends out there that I like. And I'm looking at one, again, Jared Cook, that I'm hoping falls to me. If I can get Jared Cook in the 12th round, that is amazing value, because I expect him to be easily a tight end 1, quite probably a top 6 tight end, being Drew Brees' tight end. So I will come back to that. I'm definitely looking wide receiver. There's a lot of handcuffs here, but I don't really want to have a handcuff. CJ Anderson's out there, which is a piece that I would like to maybe get if he falls to me much later in the draft, but I don't expect that to happen. So we're looking here. Larry Fitzgerald is a guy that's staring me in the face. He's going to be on a much better offense this year. His quarterback situation is going to be better this season, even if it's still Rosen. I think he stands out. It's between him and Kenny Stills. And Kenny Stills, we've seen flashes. Larry Fitzgerald, we've seen that if he's used properly, can still be a wide receiver 1 in this league. You know what? I'm going to buy into Larry. He's going to get a lot of volume. He's going to have a high floor, and he's proven, obviously, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I love it. He's got touchdown upside. Larry Fitzgerald's on my bench. And then I've got David Njoku, Geronimo Allison, John Brown, Antonio Callaway, Tyrell Williams, so Oakland Raiders number 2 receiver now, gone. Jamison Crowder, David Moore. We have Traquan Smith. Oh, Traquan Smith fell. I didn't even see him. Oh, well. And John Ross all got taken. Top of the 12th, Ben Roethlisberger, Trey Burton, Chicago Bears defense. So we have our first defense off the board, the Bears. Phillip Rivers, Albert Wilson. So we've got we're starting to get some deep dives here. Delaney Walker, Mitch Trubisky, Ito Smith. Oh, Jared Cook went with the pick right before us. No! Oh, dang it. Was really hoping that wouldn't happen. Now I'm in a predicament. Now I don't have very many options at tight end. So I'm going to pull the trigger at tight end now that I've missed out on the one guy I was hoping would fall to me at the back of the 12th. I'm surprised he was still there. I don't expect him to be there in your normal drafts, but I was kind of playing the odds here. So 12th round, late 12th. My options are, Cameron Brate's pretty polarizing. OJ Howard obviously being there as well. That dilutes things. Jordan Reed, we know, is super, super talented when healthy. Vance McDonald, we expect to have a big uptick in production this year. Jack Doyle coming back from injury, but Eric Ebron's there. I'm not a huge fan of that. Cal Rudolph could possibly get going with Kirk Cousins this year in Minnesota. We thought it was going to happen last year. We were wrong. Maybe it could happen this year, but I'm going to buy into the old legend and a guy who's got a new offensive coordinator and could seriously be a sleeper with the best red zone passing quarterback in the league. I'm going to go play for the upside here in Jimmy Graham. That's probably making a lot of people kind of sick to their stomachs, but I'm going to do it. Jimmy Graham's on my team. Alex Collins went, then it was Kenny Stills. Couple of back-to-back quarterbacks as bench quarterbacks start getting taken. Lamar Jackson and Tom Brady both went. And so here I'm sitting. I could get my last bench player. Guys like CJ Anderson, a guy I've been talking about, still out there. Plenty of guys who could land decent roles that have not been signed yet, like a Spencer Ware could be a sneaky pick. I could get one of my handcuffs in Jamal Williams right now. All possibilities. But I'm going to try and get my kicker defense that I would like to have. We've seen one defense go already, so I am anticipating probably a defensive run soon. And I'm going to go for the hometown pick. Not the Jags. My Baltimore Ravens defense, they were the number one defense in the league last year, and they lost some pieces, but they're not done. I can tell you they're not done. There's a lot of names that people don't know that they're still going to bring up. So I'm going to grab my Ravens defense. It's a little bit of a homer pick in me, but hey, if you don't love your team, you don't want to. The worst thing in fantasy football is to lose with a team you hate. That'll make you just hate just the concept of fantasy football, start to finish, top to bottom. So, and when it comes down to it, especially these later rounds, get the players you like. You want to root for your team. And behind that, Jamal Williams went, so my handcuff is gone. Deshaun Hamilton went. Peyton Barber. We have Doug Martin, free agent. Jack Doyle, Chris Thompson, CJ Anderson did go. That's unfortunate. Malcolm Brown, Spencer Ware. Top of the 14th, we have that defensive run I was expecting. Jacksonville Jaguars, Houston Texans. This is not something you should see. Well, you might see, depending on how plugged in your audience is. Greg Olsen was drafted. He retired, so he shouldn't be drafted in your leagues, but I guess anything's possible. The Vikings defense, the Rams defense, the Chargers defense, the Browns defense, the Saints defense, the Buffalo Bills defense, and now I'm sitting on the board, so I can get my hands on the kicker that I want. I would normally go Justin Tucker here. Justin Tucker, my Baltimore Ravens, but I also, as much as I love Justin Tucker, I don't want to have the same defense and special teams because that can cannibalize each other depending on if one's having a good game, the other one might not. It can go either way, or if the team as a whole has a bad week, it affects multiple positions. So I can go get my hands on the guy who was the number one kicker when healthy the last 2 seasons. And I can get my hands on kicker for the Los Angeles Rams. Absolute money. Automatic guy, except for when it really counted in the playoffs. Greg Zuerlein. He is on my team. I got the top kicker in fantasy last season. Love it. Broncos defense, Cowboys defense. Justin Tucker was the next kicker off the board. I would love to have him on my team, but again, I'm trying to not be a homer here. And then Harrison Butker went, and I'm sitting here on the board. So I have on my team 5 running backs. I have 5 wide receivers. So for me, leaving a draft, I don't do backup quarterbacks. I don't do backup tight ends. That's my philosophy. It's way too easy to stream those positions if you play the matchups. So I'd much rather take a shot at a guy who has serious upside that I can either trade or I wouldn't mind dropping. So naturally, I would love to look running back here. I would rather leave with 6 running backs than 6 wide receivers because wide receiver is easy to stream. Running backs, not easy to do at all. But it's pretty slim pickings at running back. I could get my hands on a Carlos Hyde with the Chiefs. He's a backup right now. Kalen Ballage with the Dolphins, a backup. Obviously, all these guys are going to be backups. Giovanni Bernard, Mike Davis with the Bears, Jalen Richard, Frank Gore, Case Edmond. Man, there's a lot of guys. And we're not drafting rookies here because the rookies, they haven't obviously been selected yet. So this is all current players. And that's why these guys will probably not be drafted at all come your actual leagues. There's not a lot that I really like at the running back position. I've got legit studs. The only one that's actually catching my eye is Frank Gore, because LaShawn McCoy has a history of going down. Frank Gore could also be used heavily in the red zone. But I don't know. None of these guys, to me, seem like they're worth a draft pick, so we're going to go look at wide receiver. And there's a couple guys that really stand out to me at wide receiver, so we're going to look there. Specifically, James Washington, probably going to be the number 2 in Pittsburgh. Deshaun Jackson, who we know has definite upside, going back to Philly, where he started. We've got Zay Jones, probably the number 1 receiver in Buffalo, which shows you how much faith people have in Buffalo Bills this season. Their number 1 receiver, probably not going to be drafted. Devontae Parker, Quincy Nunwa, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is still out there. But I'm going to pull the trigger on Deshaun Jackson just because I like the story. I know what could be. And if he ends up laying an egg, I don't really care because I can drop him. And that rounds out my team. So, and I got an A-. Oh no, that means my team probably sucks. The lower your score is on these, generally the better your team is. These things are based on just, the only way you can get like a really high rating is to take whatever they say is the best player available, which is not exciting to me. I don't want that ranking. So, my team, as I look back over it, I have Baker Mayfield as my quarterback. Top 6 guy to me. Love to have him. Ezekiel Elliott. Oh, sorry, top 6 quarterback. Ezekiel Elliott, a top 3 running back. Love that. Aaron Jones, a guy who I think can be a fringe running back 1 I have, so I've got 2 number 1 potential running backs here. Mike Evans, who is a definite wide receiver 1, and Jarvis Landry. I expect he's going to take a dip in production this year because Odell Beckham Jr. is there, but I also think the offense is going to be in scoring position more often. Jarvis Landry is going to be used a lot. He has a great floor, and I don't have to use him every week if I don't like to as my wide receiver 2. I like that, and I like the stack with Baker Mayfield. If he scores a touchdown, I can double dip. Jimmy Graham, it's a little bit of a long shot, but we might have been a year too early on him. We were singing praises of how good this looked last season. Could still turn out to be really good just a year later with a better offensive system, better offensive coordinator. Everything's going to be better in Green Bay this year, and a healthy Aaron Rodgers. And Jimmy Graham's second year with the team, familiarity with the players, not the system, but the players around him. He could have a really nice resurgence, a forgotten player in 2019. Really like that. Greg Zuerlein and the Ravens defense doesn't get any better than that to me. On my bench at running back, I have Ronald Jones. I have... Who else is on my bench? And Adrian Peterson. And then, very strange for me, I ended with a bunch of wide receivers. DJ Moore, love it. Definite upside there. Could be a high-end wide receiver, too. Same with Golden Tate. Larry Fitzgerald, he's going to be a probably flex player with wide receiver 2 upside week to week. Might get you a really nice couple touchdown game. Could be a wide receiver 1 from time to time. I don't know if I doubt his floor is going to be there. Then Deshaun Jackson, very boom bust. If you're playing one of those matchups where your opponent has played most of his players and you're going into Sunday night, Monday night football, and you need just a home run to possibly win your game, Deshaun Jackson could be that guy. So sometimes that's where the strategy comes in. You've got to play the game. You've got to know what your opponent's doing and what you have to do to overcome that to win. So this is my team. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, or if you're on Twitch, you can let me know right now. We'll happily talk about it after the recording. But yeah, that's my team. So with all of that being said, first mock draft is in the books. Normally we do these one of 2 ways. Normally it's myself and the other 2 guys that will all be drafting with me. So we draft 3 teams, we compare notes, we deep dive the draft. We're going to probably recap what happened on the draft and some hot takes on it on Friday's show. I'll share this with the guys. Or we will all 3 consensus draft a team together. So that to me is the most fun way to do it, because you get a real inside look at our narratives and why we do what we do, and we argue about it. And that's the fun thing about this show, is that we don't all agree. We all have different philosophies. Like I went quarterback much earlier than I ever do in this draft. CJ and Jason both draft quarterback way earlier than me, so they would probably tell you that was value. That was where you should take them. I probably would have wanted to wait. Comes down to personal preference, and that's why those shows are always really, really fun, because you get to see the inner workings of what makes us do what we do for fantasy. So all good stuff. Let me know your thoughts on the draft, and with that, we're out of here. So everybody, that's gonna do it for us today. Make sure you tune in on Friday. We'll be back, and it should be fun. I'm not gonna tease the topic, but we're gonna recap this draft for sure. We gotta talk about some rule changes for the league. We didn't talk about those yet because I wanted all the guys to be here. And again, make sure you follow all the things on Twitter at the FF Fanatics, or individually, I'm at GPalmerFFF. Support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Follow, rate, review, subscribe wherever you're listening. And yeah, we'll see you guys on Friday. Take care, guys. Bye.